So next I want to add some user management and some user permissions. Um, so let's go ahead and first create the route for the new page. So go into public app, views, pages, and let's create a new folder called, we'll say management. And inside of that, let's create our file called, we'll say management.html. Okay. And then let's add that to our routes. Whoops. Okay, and then let's go ahead and create this same controller. So go into your controllers folder and create a new one. We'll name it management controller. Say management controller. Okay, and then don't forget to include this in your index file. So go into your scripts right here, add it here at the bottom. Okay, and then go over into your routes app and include it here. So we'll say management controller. Okay, once you hit save on that, go ahead and refresh. And if you head over to the management page, you should see it log that test to the console there. Okay, so you can go ahead and close that up. Actually, I'm going to keep it up for right now. Okay, so before we go on, let's go into our user model. So app models user, and we're going to add an additional field to this, and it's going to define what permissions users have. So we'll name it permission. It's going to be type string, required true, default user. So we're going to have, for this tutorial, we're going to have 3 different roles that users can have. They're going to have admin, they're going to have moderator, and then user. So by default, when users register, they're going to have the basic user privileges, and then they can be promoted to admin or moderator. Okay, and the next thing that you want to do is go ahead and create a user with that permission field, and make sure that you set it to admin so that we'll have full privileges at first. Okay, so the next thing we'll want to do is this page here, the management page, let's add it to the nav bar at the top there. So let's go ahead and go back into index, and right after all these other ones, we'll create a new one. Okay. So now on this page, what we need to do is we're going to restrict the access, okay? So only admin and moderators can view this page. Normal users will not be able to view this page, because this page, what we're going to do here is display all the users, and we're going to be able to edit their accounts, their permissions, etc. Okay. So in order to do that, in order to restrict the access of that route, we have to go into our routes file and add some more code here. So first we want to make sure that the user is authenticated, so go ahead and add that. And then we're going to add an additional one, and it's going to be permission. We're going to set it to true. Or I'm sorry, not true. We're going to specify which permissions we want to allow. We want to allow admin and moderators, okay? So don't add users to that, because these are going to be the only two roles or permissions that are going to be allowed to view this page, okay? Whoops. There we go. Okay, so at the bottom here, we have to go ahead and add some more code to check that role on each route, okay? But we only need to check it if the route specifies that it needs this, okay? And the place we do that is right here, okay? So when the route changes, first we check to see if it's a valid route, okay? That's what this check if undefined is. Then we check to see if authentication is required, right? That's this. And then we run the code within there, okay? So what we need to do is, so right here it says only run this, or check if the user is logged in. If they're not, prevent them from going, okay? So we just add right here, we'll say else if. It's another condition that we're going to check. And for this one, it's going to be next.route.permission is true. So what we're saying here is that if it's true that permission is specified in the route, then we're going to check the current user to see if their permission is valid, okay? So what we need to do is create that endpoint to get the user's permission. So go ahead into your app routes api.js file, and we're going to create that new route to get the user's permission, okay? So right here at the very bottom, what we'll do is we'll create a new route that says router.get/permission. And so since this comes after our middleware right here, this is our middleware, we already have the currently logged in user object. So we can pass that on to this route. So we'll say user.findOne, and we'll find them by username using this object that we get returned here, right? Only we'll add .username to that. Of course, if error, then throw error. And we'll say if no user was found, then respond with an error. No user was found. This probably will never happen because we won't even get to the middleware or past the middleware if they don't have a valid token. So this will never happen, but I'm just including that just in case I miss something, okay? So we'll say else, respond with JSON, success, true. And instead of a message, we're going to respond with the permission that the user has. So we'll say user.permission, okay? So this is the route that we're going to use to obtain what permission that user has. Okay, so I'm going to copy this and I'm going to go into our services, all right, into our user services, and I'm going to create a new one. So right down here, I'll say user factory dot, I'll say get permission. Okay, and that's our route there. I just pasted that. So say return http get /API/permission. So now we can use this in our route. So going back to our routes file, make sure that you have the user object passed up here, right? So we'll go here. Actually, not there. Sorry, it's down here. It's going to be right here. We'll say comma user, and then here as well. All right, so here is where we're going to be doing the checking of the permission. So let's go ahead and paste that in there. It's going to be user dot, okay. Oops, and we're going to say dot then we're going to check what we get back from that endpoint. All right, for right now, let's go ahead and log it to the console. So go ahead and hit save and then hit refresh, and you'll see that it's logging that data now, right? It's grabbing the permission of the user. You can see that if you go to data, and you'll see right here, it knows that I'm admin, okay? And so that'll say whatever permission the current user has, okay? So now let's do some configuration with this. So we're gonna say if next.route.permission doesn't equal data.permission. And so actually, because this is an array of roles, we have to specify, right? So we'll say the first one, which is 0, okay? So here we're checking, this is what we're doing. The user comes to this route, and this will pick up if the permission is required, and if it is, we're going to execute this condition. And what we do is we go into the database, we look at the user, we see what their current permission is, and then we're checking if it matches the first index in this array, right, which is admin. If it doesn't, then we're going to check to see if it matches the second one. And then at that point, if it matches that one, then we can allow them to be on the page. All right, so here we're going to specify checking the other condition, the other access, I should say. So we'll do 1. And so what we can do is this same thing that we did up here, which is preventing them from accessing the route, and we'll just paste that in there. Okay. So in other words, if the user doesn't have permission 0, which is admin, or permission 1, moderator, then we will prevent them from viewing this page. So go ahead and hit save on that and then hit refresh, but you won't see anything happen just yet. What you'll need to do is go into your database and change your access, change your permissions, okay? First, change it to moderator to ensure that it works, okay? So just change that to moderator and then hit refresh, and you should still be able to see the page. Then go back and change it to just user, regular user. And once you hit refresh now, it should prevent you from viewing that route. And you'll see it did. It redirected us to the home page. And when we click here, it does not let us view that route, okay? Now, there's no use of displaying this up here if the user doesn't have access. So let's go ahead and limit that. And we'll use this same exact function, okay? So what we'll do is go into the main controller, and we'll go down to where the user first logs in, right? Let's see, where are we? Okay, right here. So this is our function right here for getting the currently logged in user. So we'll do that here, right? So I'll paste that in there. And so I'll say if data.permission is equal to admin or moderator, then I'm going to create a variable and I'm going to name it authorized, and I'm going to set that to true. Okay, and so this load me variable, I'm going to include that here now. And so what we can do now is, whoops, I misspelled that. It's authorized. So we can use that variable now on our index. So, oops. So go over to index, and then for that management, we'll say show if logged in and if main.authorized is true. Okay, then hit save on that, and once you hit refresh on this, you should see it disappear. Go back into the database and change your permission to either moderator or admin. Hit save on that, and then hit refresh, and you should see it come back up. Okay. So let's go ahead and start populating this page. So go on over to the management HTML page. I don't think I opened that yet. Oh, here we go. Okay, so let's go ahead and go over to the login page, and let's see, where am I? I'm going to copy this header here, and then I'm going to copy this whole thing just because there's a few things I'm going to use. One, the header, don't need the login form, but I am going to keep this loading icon and the error messages and the success message. Okay. So of course we'll change this whole main to management. And we'll change user login to user management. Okay, hit save. Let's see what that looks like. All right. Now let's go ahead and create a table. And what we're going to do in this table is we're going to display all the users in our database. Okay. So right here below this break, go ahead and create a div. For the class, I'll use Bootstrap. I'll say panel primary. Create another div here. This class will be panel heading. Then we'll pass in user management. Okay. Then below that, let's go ahead and create our table. The class is going to be table. And we're going to have 2 rows. Okay, and then in this first row, we're going to have 3 headings. That's going to be the name, username, email. Okay. Oops. Okay, and we're going to leave those empty for now. So we're going to create 4 rows, or I'm sorry, columns. So this one's going to be the actual edit button and delete button for the different users. Okay. So we'll create inside of a link. Okay. We'll say edit. Class, type will be button. Class, button, primary. Just copy and do the exact same thing. Oops. This will be danger. Changes to delete. And so what I want to do now is I'm actually going to just enter sample data here just so we can get a visual on what this is going to look like. Okay. Hit save on that and then hit refresh. Okay, and you see where we're going with this. We're going to display all the users in this row, and we're going to have a function next to each of them to either edit or delete them. Okay. So what we need to do now is create the function that's going to grab all the users from the database. So as usual, let's go back into our API and start there. So we'll create it right below the permissions. We'll say router.get. We'll say /management. Okay, in order to get all users, we just say user.find, and we create an empty object like that. if error, throw error. And actually, let's make this plural to users. Okay, just so I can differentiate. So in order to return all of these users, we first need to make sure that the person requesting this route has the appropriate permissions, okay? Because the only middleware in place right now is the one checking for tokens. So any user could have a token, but we also need to make sure they're authorized to get all the users, right? So we'll say user.find1, and we'll use the username just like we did above. I'm actually going to change this to main user just so I don't get confused here. So first, of course, if error, throw error. Then if main user not found, then we'll respond with JSON saying success false. No user found. So now we can go ahead and check the user's permission. So we'll say if user, main user dot permission is equal to admin or moderator, right? So we're letting either admins or moderators get a list of all the users, okay? And so what we'll do is, if they don't have either of those permissions, then we're going to reject the request. I'm going to say false, message, insufficient permissions. Sorry. Totally fucked this up. It's actually meant to put this here. There we go, much better. Okay, so now here is where the user actually has the permissions. So we'll say if, it's actually users because we didn't perform that one yet. We'll say success false, message, users not found. Now again, this is one of those that's never going to happen, but we're just creating this so that if it does happen in our testing, we'll at least catch it. But that's never going to happen because we won't get to that point. So we'll say else, respond with JSON, success, true. Then we'll say users. Then let's also get the user's permission. So we'll say permission. Users dot permission. Actually, let's make this plural. Okay, so go ahead and copy that route, and let's go into our services and create a new one. So in our user services, we'll say user factory dot get. We'll say get users. Okay, so meant to paste that here. Say return http get /API /management. Okay. Whoops, what did I do wrong here? Oh, yeah, I forgot to delete this. Okay. So now we can use this. Actually, I misspelled that. Get users. There we go. Now we can use this. Go back into our controller. And we're going to initiate that right off the back as soon as the page loads. Pass in user right here. We'll say, sorry, what am I doing here? Okay. Then, okay. Now this time we're not going to log to the console the data because it's going to be a lot of data depending on how many users you have in your database. Okay. Okay, so when the page first loads, we're going to have two variables that are going to come into play, right? So first, let me go ahead and create this variable. So we'll have one that says loading, and this is going to be for the loading icon that we're then going to set to false once we get all the users. Then we're going to have another one that says access denied. And so what we're going to do with this one is we're going to hide everything until we can verify that the current user has the appropriate permissions, okay? Okay, so we'll do if data success, else, create an error message, I'm going to clear that whenever the page loads. Okay, and then here we're going to have to check for permissions. And so actually going back to the API, just as I did a mistake here, so instead of getting the user's permission, we're actually going to get the main user. So say main user permission, and we can change this to singular. Go ahead and hit save on that and go back to the, oops, wrong controller. Where am I? And so now we're going to check the permission of the user, right? So we'll say if data, whoops. So we'll say if data.data.permission is equal to admin or moderator, then we're good to go. Else, no, we're not. So we'll say app error message. We'll set this one to insufficient permission. And then, whoops, don't forget to clear the loading here. Okay. So once we've cleared that they have the permission, we can go ahead and assign that variable. So we'll just name it users, and we'll say data.users. Go ahead and set the loading to false, stop that icon, and then we can allow the access. Okay. So here we can also check to see if the user is admin or moderator. If they're admin, then let's say we'll give them edit and delete privileges for the users. If they're just a moderator, then we only allow them to edit but not to delete. Okay. So we'll create a new variable. We'll say edit access, set to false by default, and then delete access, set it to false by default. So right here we'll do another check, and it'll say if data is equal to admin, then we'll set these to true. Else if fit equals to, whoops, to moderator, then we'll set the edit access only to true. Okay, so now we can go ahead and start using these variables that we've created here. So let's go back over to the management.html. So what we'll do is let's create an ng repeat right here. So we'll say ng repeat. For each person in management.users. Okay, and then, whoops, actually I put this in the wrong spot. Should be right here because this is where I actually want it to be repeated. Instead of my name, I'll create an Angular. I'll say person dot name. Person dot username. Person dot email. Okay, once you hit save on that, go ahead and hit refresh and make sure that you're getting all the users out of your database. Okay, So as you can see, it's displaying every single user in here. Now these look like the same because I just basically created a bunch of duplicates, but they're in fact different users. Okay, and you should also have the edit and delete button next to each one of those. All right. And then make sure when you first load the page that it's also displaying that loading icon while it's generating this table. So we also need to limit these edit and delete buttons, right? Only admins should be able to see both, and moderators will only see the edit button. So remember, we created a variable for this, so what we can do is just right here for the edit button, say ng show management.edit access, and then same thing for this one, except it'll be delete access. Now, if you're set to admin, you won't notice any change, but make sure to go into your database and change your access to moderator, just to make sure that that delete button vanishes. Okay, so in doing this, we're also making sure that even if for some reason that button still displays, we still want to have validation on the back end. That way, if somehow the user manages to click the delete button via maybe disabling JavaScript or something, we still want to make sure that they have the appropriate privileges. So we're checking both on the front end and on the back end, okay? But this is just for aesthetic purposes, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and change this back to admin for right now. Okay. Now, one issue you run into, if you look at my scroll bar here, it's humongous. Now, it's no problem loading on my computer because I have a decent computer, but on some computers, it may not be a good idea to display this many records. And it also depends on how complex your database is. If you're using Mongo or MySQL or something, this may take a while to load. So what I'm going to do is add a filter to this to limit how many I want to show. So right here in the ng repeat, right after users, I'll just say not filter, limit to, and I'm going to set a custom limit. All right, normally here you can say 5, 4, whatever you want, but I'm going to create a custom one. Okay, and then I'm going to create that in the controller. So going back to the controller, when the page first loads, I'll create that and I'll say a limit. I'm going to set it to 5. Misspelled that. Okay, so then hit save on that and hit refresh, and you should see now that it filters it to just those 5, okay? And you can set this to whatever you think is appropriate, but what we're going to do now is display a box here in where users can specify how many records they want to display on the page, okay? So let's go back to the HTML portion, and right above here, let's go ahead and create 2 buttons. One of them is going to be show all, and the other one's going to be apply filter. Type will be button. Class will be btn success. Okay. Actually, let me change this to warning. Then go ahead and create a div here. And for the class, add a custom, I'll say show more. And I'm actually going to go into my CSS, into my style.css, and I'm going to create some custom styling for that. And all I'm going to do is just make it display in line. Okay. And that's just so these buttons will be next to the input here. So create another div inside of that. And then we'll use some Bootstrap for this. Say column large 6. Then create another input. This one's going to be class input group. Then I'm going to create a span. It's going to be class input group add-on. So I'm going to say results to display. Then here I'll have my input. Oops. Form control, some more bootstrap. Then I'll create an ng model for this, and I'll say number. Okay, let's hit save on this so far and refresh and see what it looks like. Okay, so you see what we're doing here. We're just creating a little box and where the user can either provide a number to specify how many to show, or click show all to show all records. Let me add a break here. Oops, let me add one more. Okay, there we go, and that looks a little bit better. So then let's add our two functions. So for the apply filter, we'll say ng-click, management dot show more, and then we'll pass in this number from the input, right? So we'll just paste that in there. Then right here we'll say ng-click management dot show all. Okay, and then we just have to create these two functions now on the back end. Okay, so I'm just going to copy these just in case I forget, and then down here I'll paste that. Okay, so I'll say app.showMore, the number, and then app.showAll. Right. Oops, totally put this in the wrong spot. There we go. And so what we'll do is we'll say, first we'll make sure that that number provided is larger than 0. And if it is, we'll execute, else we'll create an error message. So we'll say show more error, and we'll say please enter a valid number. Okay. And then if it is larger, then we can go ahead and replace the limit to match whatever the user has specified. Okay. So go ahead and hit save on that, and then hit refresh, and let's test out the results. Let's specify 2. Okay, and you'll see there. Let's do 1. Okay, and then enter blank and make sure that it doesn't do anything. Actually, let's go ahead and use, we created the variable for the show more error, so let's just go ahead and implement that now. So back in the management page, we have this custom error that we copied over. Let's go ahead and change it a bit. Let's see here. Right, instead of error message, we'll say error show more. And then we'll just move this below, oops, say right here. Actually, it's show more error. Okay, and then go back to the controller and let's see, we want to make sure we clear this whenever the user presses the button. So we'll say set to false, hit save on that. Okay, and then let's go ahead and refresh and enter any number, and then enter nothing and make sure you get that error message. Okay, there you go. And then make sure if you enter any letters, you also get that error. Okay, let's go ahead and add some activation function to the show all button. Okay. So all we need to do here is set the limit to undefined so that there is no limit. Then we'll also clear any errors that may exist. Okay. Hit save on that, then hit refresh and try pressing that show all button, and you'll see it displays every single record. Okay. Likewise, try to add a filter and then pop back to show all, and then get a error to appear here. Okay, and then hit that show all button just to see if it clears it, which it should. Okay. And if you'd like, you can clear this. All you need to do is just grab the variable for the scope, which is the number. You'll see that right here. The where is it? right here, ng model number. So if you wanted to clear that, all you needed to do was just add another variable here that says scope.number equals undefined. But I don't really care about clearing that. I'll just leave that as is. The last thing I'm going to do is actually, because this gets long, let's say the user gets to the bottom, rather than having to scroll all the way back up to add the filter, I'm just going to copy and paste that to the bottom, right? So right here, actually delete this. And I just want to make sure that it's reflected, okay? And you see that kind of makes it easier if you hit show all and then you scroll to the bottom rather than having to scroll up to the top. You can just apply the filter from here, okay? Okay, moving on. We now want to add some functionality to this edit button and the delete button, okay? So let's start with the delete button. So what we need to do is go ahead and create that API for deleting. Okay, and we'll create a new one down here. Router.delete / management. We'll say users. Actually want to change this to user because we're only going to be deleting one at a time. Oops, how did that happen? So first we're going to grab the user that's being sent through the URL, right? So we'll say, actually we're going to be passing username. So we'll create a variable, we'll say deleted user equals request.params.username. So just like before, we're going to be checking to make sure that the user has access. The user that's deleting has access to do this, so we'll say find one, and we'll use the same object as above. Okay, if error, throw error. If none was found, no user found. Okay, that should never happen, but we're just checking for it. Make sure we address all errors. Actually, it should be main user. So then we'll check to see if he has the right privileges. So we'll say if main user.permission doesn't equal admin, that's the only people we want to be able to delete, then we're going to reject the request. Success false. Message insufficient permissions. Else. So then we're going to use this variable now up here to actually delete the user now that we've verified that they have access. So we'll say user.findOne and remove. Of course, we'll use a username. We'll say deleted user, it's a variable we created. Say if error, so error, success true. Okay, this means they've successfully deleted the user. Okay, whoops, did not mean to put that there. There we go. So I'm just going to copy this so we can use it in a second here. Go back into your user services and let's create a new one. We'll say user factory.delete. You can say delete user if you want to. I'm just going to put delete. Return http delete / API management username. Then I'll also pass this into the function and delete this. And actually, I'm going to change this to delete user rather. So hit save on that and then go back into your controller. We can implement that now. So we'll create a custom function. We'll say delete user function. And then we'll pass in a user name. Okay, and paste that there. Say then. So we'll say if data.success, else we'll give an error message. We can say show more. We'll use that same one. Show more error. Okay, and so what we need to do once we get the success is run this function up here again so that we can reload the users. So what we'll need to do is implement this inside of a function. So we'll say function get users, and then we'll paste that in there. Okay. Oops. And then we'll run that once we delete the user. Okay. So now what we need to do is take this function and implement it into the HTML, right? So here's the delete button. So we'll say ng click management.delete user. Whoops, delete. And then, of course, we said we're going to need to pass the username, so we'll just use this same from up here, right? Okay, and then going back to the controller, don't forget to pass the username into the function. Okay. All right, and then let's go over to our API, and there's an error I made here. Instead of error user, it should actually be request response, because that's what we're going to be getting. So go ahead and hit save on that, and then give your page a refresh and hit show all if you need to, and find a user you're okay with deleting. So I'm going to try out deleting this one, the 12. So I'm just hit that delete button there, and you'll see it disappears and automatically refreshes, and that's because we're calling the function to get all the users once again. Okay, so now let's move on to adding a page for editing the users. And so the way we do that, going back to our controller, the management.html page, for this button, we're not going to have a function. Instead, we're going to have it in a link. And so actually this second button is not going to be a link, so we can change that. Okay. But this first one is, and so we'll say /edit/ I'm going to create an Angular here. We'll say person _dot_ID, right? And so what this is going to do is anytime we edit a user, we're going to go to their profile using the person ID and the parameters. So I'll show you in a second what this is going to look like, right? And this is just so we can refresh and copy and paste and send this link to other people, okay? So let's go ahead and create that route, and let's create the page as well. So up here in the management folder, create a new file. We'll say edit.html. Then we'll just insert some text here, hello from edit route. Go back into your routes, and you can copy the management one. Except this one will be edit/:ID. Then manage is going to be edit.html, edit controller as edit. Okay. and we can allow admin or moderator, either one will be fine. So let's go ahead and create that controller right now. Go back into the management module. Let's create the new one down here. So hit save on this and then hit refresh. Now, anytime you hit a edit button, you should see the new edit route along with the user's ID in the database. Okay, and that's going to be unique to every user. So if you go back and hit one of the other ones, you'll see the number has changed. Okay, and so here we're going to build the page to be able to edit the user. So let's head over onto the edit page and delete that. And I'm actually going to copy this same header and use it here, and I'll say edit user. So I'm going to copy some bootstrap here, so I'll say class nav tabs. I'll say name, and actually this name is going to be a link. Okay. Oops. We'll say name, username, email. Actually, what was the order that I just played it down here? Name, username, then email. Okay. Oops, I meant this actually to be a list. Okay, hit refresh, or save and refresh, and you see where we're going with this. We're creating a tab for each of the fields for the user. Okay. And actually, I'm going to create a fourth one for permissions, because I also want to edit the user's permissions. Okay. So we're going to break this into 4 phases, right? So phase 1 will be the name. And so each time the user clicks on one of those tabs, it's going to activate the different phases. So it's going to be name phase, username phase, okay, then we're also going to add an ng class to this. We'll say name tab. Okay. So let's go ahead and create these different phases. All right, let's go into the controller. Where am I here? Okay, and then I'm just going to paste these down here as a reference. Just copy all of them. Whoops, did I copy the same one twice? Yep, I did. Okay, and then I'm just going to comment this out for right now. So making all of these functions. Okay. Okay, and then going back to the edit page, I actually want to change these. So it's going to be username tab, email tab, then permissions tab. And so in the controller, when it first loads, we're going to set the name tab to active. And then don't forget to pass scope here. Whoops, not with the period. So now if you hit save on that and you hit refresh, you'll see that the name tab is it's the current active tab, right? Because we set that as soon as the page defaults. So what we need to do is whenever the user clicks either one of these, we need to change which tab is then active, okay? And so the way we do that is we just set that inside of each function, okay? So inside of all the other ones, we'll change it to default. Then we'll set them to true for each respective tab, okay? So for example, this is the email tab, so we'll set the email tab to active. Then this is the username tab, so we'll set that one to active. Then this is the permissions tab, so we'll set that one to active. Okay, hit save on that and let's see if this worked. Go ahead and hit refresh. Once you hit every tab, you should see it become active, okay? So all we're doing there is using Angular to manipulate the class, and every time we click on each one of these links, we're changing which class is active, okay? Now you could do this with CSS, but I just figured it'd be easy to do with Angular, since we're already creating functions for each one of these anyway. So let's go into our register page. And what we're going to do is copy the name input here and use that same one, okay? And so go back into the edit page, and so under phase 1, go ahead and paste that in. Actually, what we're going to do is put it inside a form, so create a form first and then paste that in there. There we go. Okay, and then I'm just going to replace a few of these variables. Instead of reg form, we're going to call it edit. We'll say name form. And so I'll just name that here. I'll say name form, then pass the no validate. Instead of register, I'm going to replace that with edit. I'll replace that with edit form. Oops, yeah, edit form. Actually, no, name form. So it'll become confusing if I do that. So then up here, I'll say edit.nameForm. Okay. And so I'm only going to show this form if phase 1 is active. So I'll say phase 1. So going back to the controller, we're going to set that on page load. So we'll say app.phase1 equals true. And then also right here. Oops. And then we're going to set it to false in all the other phases. And then we're going to set to false all the other phases as well. Let's see, so we got name, username, email, and permissions. Okay, just making sure. Okay, and just like before, we're going to set true whichever phase it is. I believe email is third phase. Yes. And then username, I think, is phase 2. Let me make sure. Yes, phase 2. Okay, go back to edit.html. And then let's see here. Okay, also add the edit there. And so this form, the form for updating the name, will only show if it's true. Now, the other thing I want to do is actually grab the button. So go back over to the registration page to the very bottom and grab that submit button, okay? And we're going to paste that here. Say right here. We'll change from register to update. And then let's go ahead and change this ng model to, we'll say new name. And then when the user submits this form, we'll say ng submit. We'll pass in edit.update name. And we'll pass in two things. We'll pass in the new name, and then we'll also pass in whether or not this form is valid. So we'll say edit.nameForm.name.valid. Okay. So then we just need to create this function in our controller. So let's go back to the controller. And we'll create that one down here. So we'll say app.updateName. It's going to take those two things, which is new name plus whether or not it's valid. So we'll say valid, execute code, else app.errorMessage. Please we're also going to use the disabled function. We'll set it to false upon error actually. Oops. There we go. Okay, and then let's go back to the edit HTML page. Let's change this up a bit here. And so actually for this name form, make sure they all say edit in front of them. Okay, because we're going to be doing it a little bit differently. Oops. Okay, then what you want to do is hit save on that and then hit refresh. And you want to make sure that the validation is being required. Okay, so you should be seeing this just like on the registration page. Okay. And so what that'll do is that'll ensure that even if the user updates their name or you update their name for them, it's a valid name. Now, in order for this to work, we have to get whatever user is attached to this ID. So we need to go into our API and create a new route. Okay, so we'll just create it, let's say right down here at the end. Say router.get /edit. We'll grab the ID. So just like above, we'll create a variable. We'll say edit user with the params ID. Okay. And then also just like above, we'll also make sure the user doing this has the appropriate access. So we'll say find one by username using the decoded user. Okay, and this is all repetitive, that's why I'm not going over it, but so first we need to make sure that the user has the appropriate permissions. So we'll say .permissions is equal to admin or moderator. Okay, and this is if they don't have the permissions. Okay, and now we can say user find one using the ID with the variable we created. If error, throw error. If no user found. And instead of sending back a message, we'll just send back the user. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and copy this route because I'm using the controller. So let's go back to our services and create another one. Actually, let's do this one underneath the other one. Under get users, we'll say get user. So you'll need to pass in the ID for this to work. We'll say return plus ID. Okay. Okay, so now we can use this. So let's go ahead and copy this and go over to our controller. And so what I want to do is when this page initially loads, we don't want this to be blank. We want it to display the current user's name, okay? Because it doesn't make sense to go to someone's profile and then the name is empty. So first, let's go ahead and invoke that function. I'll just paste it here. User dot, then function. Okay. And so we'll say if data.data.success, else create an error message. So what we'll do is we'll use the ng model for this this field, which remember was new name. Okay. So we'll say scope dot new name equals whatever we get back from the database. And actually it's got to be user dot name because it's a user object. Okay, and then don't forget we also have to now pass in the ID from the URL. Okay, so that's going to be route params.id. Then make sure to pass this into the function. Whoops, not that function, up here. There we go. Oops. Okay, and actually, I meant to, this is the wrong place to be doing this. We actually want to run this as soon as the page loads, so let's go ahead and paste that up here. And actually, don't forget to pass user up here, since we're using the user object there. So hit save on that and then hit refresh, and there you go. You see the user's name automatically inserted there. So now we have to add some functionality to the update button. So let's go down here. We already have the function. We just have to implement that new name. Okay, so let's go back into our API and we have to create another route. So this one will be similar. It'll be router.put/edit. Okay, so we're going to use this route for all of our edits, for editing username, name, permissions, everything. Okay, so it's going to be a little bit long. All right, first thing we need to do is grab the user. Just like before, let's create that variable. We'll say request.body.username. So first we'll say if request.body.name is provided, then save that to a variable that says new name. If request.body.username is provided, then save that to new username. If request.body.email is provided, save that. And finally, if permission is provided, create a new variable for that. Okay. So before we do any updates, we first have to verify that the current user doing this has access. So we'll say find one. So first let's detect whether or not the user made any changes to their name, right? So what we'll say is if new name is true, then we'll check, see if they have access. So we'll say main user.permission is equal to admin, or moderator. Then make the change, else, oops, wrong else. Then we'll say, nope, can't do it. So in order to update the user, once we verified that they have the proper permissions, first we have to find them. Say user.find1. We'll go by the username that we've grabbed up at the top there. Hold on, I think I misspelled this. Username, yep. Okay, so now we have to go ahead and save the changes. So we'll say user.name and assign the new name that we retrieved, which is new name, and then save it to the database. So we'll say function error if error, log it to the console. And then we'll say, oops, actually let me do this. If error, log to the console, else respond with JSON, success. Name has been updated. Okay, so that was pretty lengthy, and that was just for checking the name. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for the username, right? So right here where it says if new name, we'll create another statement at the bottom here that says if new username is true. Okay, we're going to do the same thing. Make sure they have access. I'm just going to copy all this. Okay. And if they do have access, we'll do the same thing. Find one. Okay, same thing. We'll create the save here. We'll say user dot username and assign it the new one, which is what's the variable? New username. And then just for the record, I'd recommend not allowing users to update their username, only because that's not something normally you're allowed to do. Okay, and then right here, we'll create another check, this time for the new email variable. We're almost done. We've just got 2 left. Okay. So I'm just going to copy all this because it's going to be the same. If else. And I'm trying to see if there's a faster way to copy all of this. Let's see here. I think I can copy this part. Let's see. Okay. Yep. And then what I'll do is I'll just change this to, what is this, email? And change the variable to, whoops, new email. And then change this to email has been updated. Okay, there you go. Saved us some time. So then now for the last one, we'll say if, what's the variable? New permission is true. Then perform this. Same as before. Check if it's a user, an authorized user. Oops, what did I do wrong here? Oh, okay, I see what I did. I didn't put this in proper parentheses. There we go. Much better. And then do this right here. Okay, now instead of this save portion, this is actually going to be a little bit different. Okay, because the reason being is, if let's say we have a moderator who's trying to edit an admin person, we don't want them to be able to bump down an admin. How can you bump down someone from a level that you're not even at? You see what I'm saying? So it's just a hierarchy thing, right? If the person you're trying to edit is a higher level access than you shouldn't be able to edit them. So we have to do that check here. So we'll say if new permission is equal to admin, then we're going to see if the current user has access to do that. Whoops, actually I meant this should be user. And so then what we do here is we check if the person is set to admin. Right, so right here is what you're trying to set the user to, and right here is what the current user is set at. So we're checking to see if someone's trying to downgrade someone from an admin to a user. So then what we'll do is we'll say if main user dot permission is equal to admin, well actually let's say doesn't equal to admin, then we'll say success false, message insufficient permissions, you cannot downgrade admin, or we'll say you must be an admin to downgrade another admin user, or say admin. Okay, and then else we'll say user.permission and set it to new permission, and then save. Okay, and then we're also going to perform this, we have to add an else here. So it'll be, let's see, right here. So here we're checking to see if it's set to admin. Well, if it's set to moderator, then of course they can be downgraded to an admin, because that means the person editing it is either a moderator or an admin. So you'll see in a little bit what I'm talking about here, right? So we'll say else, and then we'll paste that in there and do that save there. Okay, so now we just have to do this one more time, 2 more times for moderator and admin. Okay, so this is for user access, so we just have to do the same thing for admin. So right up here where it says if new, right at the end of that bracket, go ahead and create another if statement that says if new permission is equal to, we'll say admin. Okay, so we're going to see first if the user permission is already set to admin. If it's already set to admin, then the user has to be an admin in order to change that. So we'll say main, if main user dot permission does not equal admin, then you can't do it. And we'll just copy the same message. You must be an admin to downgrade another admin. So in other words, this first one is checking to see if you're trying to downgrade an admin to a user level. The second is checking to see if you're trying to downgrade an admin to a moderator level. You must be an admin in order to downgrade those 2 permissions. In other words, you must have the highest level access. So in other words, let me put it simply, you can only change the permissions of someone equal level to you or lower. a moderator can't change the permissions of an admin, okay? And that's just a simple way of doing it. Some of the more complex databases do it a little bit differently. Some I've seen where there's different databases for different accesses, or different tables, I should say. Okay, so anyway, let's move on. And I'm just going to copy this, paste that here. And then same thing as above, we're going to have to create an else here, because if they're trying to change it to moderator, or rather if they're trying to change the user's permission from moderator to user, then we should allow that. Okay, so we just have one last check to do, so we'll do right here, say if new permission is equal to admin. In other words, if you're trying to set the current user to an admin level, of course you have to be at least an admin to do it. You can't be a moderator giving people admin access because you're not even an admin yourself. Say main user permission. Then we'll do an else here. We'll say res.json access false message insufficient permissions. You must be an admin to upgrade to the admin level. We'll say upgrade someone to the admin level. Okay. And then we'll copy this and paste that here. Okay, so that was pretty lengthy, but I think that's about it. So now we just have to copy this route and create a new function for it. So let's go into our services. And we'll say user factory.edit user. This would be return HTTP put /edit username. So let's make sure we pass that here as well. Okay, and then let's use this in our controller now. Okay, so here's our function for updating the name, right? So now we can go ahead and paste that in here somewhere, right? So let's just paste it in here for right now. Actually, let's go ahead and do this. And then remember, you have to pass in username. So let's create an object, right? Let's say app.userObject. Actually, it doesn't need to be app, it can be variable. Okay, and then if you go back up here, remember we grabbed the user's current name right here. So what we need to do is also grab their username. So what we can do is we'll say new username. data.data.user.username, and then we can use this down here at the bottom. Whoops. So what we'll do is we'll append that. We'll say user object dot username is equal to this. And so in this function down here, we'll pass in the user object, right? And we'll say then function data. Okay. And actually, let's move this down here. We only want to do this if the form has been clarified to be valid. Okay. So we'll say if data.success else app.error message app.disabled equals false. Oops. There we go. So then up here, of course, we'll set a success message. And then I'm going to create a timeout here. So let me go back up and pass this here before I forget. Say timeout. What I'm going to do is when the user updates their name, I'm going to clear the form after a few seconds. So Let's pass in a function, and we'll do it after 2 seconds. So here we will clear the success message. And we will also clear disabled. And then we will also clear the form. So we'll say edit form.name equals set pristine. Oops. There we go. And then app.editForm.name set untouched. There we go. Okay, let me fix this up a bit. And actually I don't need this down here at the bottom. Okay, and then next let's go back into the API file, api.js. I just realized I made another error here, a misspelled error. If you didn't make that, cool, no worries. And then additionally up here, forgot this is case sensitive, so I'm going to change that. Okay, and then also down here, let's see, edit username. This should actually be, what did I make this? Oh yeah, edit user, that's what I did. Edit user. Let's change this to edit user. I think that's the only, okay, yeah, I did that in all of these. Make sure and do a quick search. Okay, good. Okay, now let's go back over to our main controller here, or the management controller. Okay, and actually change this to name form. That's the name of the form. Okay, and then one other thing that we need to do is scroll up to the top here. We also need to grab this new name and append it as well. So let's go ahead and do that right here. So we'll say user object.name equals whatever new name is assigned. Okay, and then actually for this one, let's not assign the username from the scope. Instead, what we can do is grab it right here. We'll say current user, just so there's no confusion. Because we're not updating the username here, so whoops, paste that here. Whoops, and misspelled that there. And so one additional error I found here is that if we use this username here, what's going to happen is it's going to conflict, because in our API we said if you detect a username, then update the username. So instead of using the username, let's use the ID. Right, so we'll say, whoops, that's not what I want to change. We'll say there. However, what we'll have to do is go back into our service, change this to ID, and then also back in our API, instead of body.username, we'll change it to _ID. And so these usernames here, we'll have to change that. So this will be _ID. _ID. Oops, not that one. _ID. Then let's go back into our edit HTML and make sure we have a success message for this. So let's just grab one from the register page. Let's just grab actually the error and the success message, and we'll just paste that at the bottom here. Actually, let's do it at the very bottom. And we'll change this register to edit, and then replace. Okay, and then go back to the controller and actually change this from username to ID. So we'll say actually _ID. Okay, so now we're ready to see this all in action. So go ahead and hit refresh and change whatever name you feel like changing. So I'll just change mine to say this, hit update, and then you'll see right there success message, and then the timeout comes into play and refreshes it. So make sure you hit refresh to make sure that the change did in fact take part, and go back to the management page. And let's say I'm going to edit this one right here, Elijah. Hit edit, change this to Bobby, hit update. I'm going to go back and make sure, and there it is. Okay. Make sure that you submit invalid name to make sure you get that error. Okay, when we do. Okay. So now we just need to do the same thing with username, email, and permission. Since we already started it, it should be pretty easy to do the same thing. So let's go back in here, and we'll just copy this whole function for updating the email. All right, we'll name it update email. Okay. Instead, we'll change this. Well, let's go back up to the top first. Make sure we're grabbing the email. So we'll say scope.new email equals data user.email. Okay. And then going back here, instead of name, it'll be dot email scope new email. There we go. Okay, and then instead of name, we're going to change this to email form dot email form dot email. And I think that's all we have to change. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's all. Okay, right here also new email. Okay, so let's go back over to the registration page, and we'll copy the email input, which is right here. And then we're going to paste it in our phase 3. Okay. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and put it in a form just like I did above. Now copy this. Set for name form, it's going to be email form. This would be phase 2. This would be update email. So you get the gist of what we're doing. We're just updating everything to reflect email. Okay, and then I'll paste over reg form, email form. Over register, I'll do edit. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Oh, and then for email form, I'm going to have to put we'll say edit.email form. It's going to fuck up the ones at the top here, but it's no big deal. Make sure there's none left like that. Okay, good. Okay, then we just have to change our ng model to new email. Okay, and then normally we had the ng blur function to check if the email is taken, but we're not going to do that for this one. But again, I would recommend not being able to update emails just because it's not something you typically see. I'm also going to copy this button up here and paste it right here at the bottom. Okay, and then for email, it's actually phase 3. And then also we're not going to need this email invalid. So go ahead and delete that. Whoops, don't forget to change this name to email. All right, and oops, I had a break line here, or line break rather. So that should be it. Go ahead and hit save, and then go back and hit refresh, and go over to the email tab, and change this to something. I'll say, let's see here. All right, and there you go. You get that update. Make sure you hit refresh to verify it is in fact updated, and then make sure to enter something invalid. It shouldn't let you. You should get that error there. Okay, there you go. So now let's do the same thing with username. Let's go back and go over to the controller, and I'll copy the same thing. Say update username, new username, and then let's grab our username object up here. Scope.new username. Okay, and replace that right here. And we'll name the form username form. Oops. Dot username, of course. Okay, I think that's everything we need to do. Let me double check. Yes. Now let's go to our registration form and grab the username div. Take that. And that'll be phase, believe 1. Is that phase 1? No, it's phase 2. Okay, let me change this. Phase 2. Okay, there we go. Paste that in there. Oops, I always forget to put this in a form. Okay, and then for the no ng blur here, so we can get rid of this register invalid. And then ng model, we'll replace that with new username. And let's see here, it's gonna be edit. What am I naming this form? We're gonna name this form it's gonna be edit.username form. Paste that up here as well. Update username, new username. Dot username valid. Okay, and then also add this submit button. And then don't forget to make this phase 2. So go ahead and hit save on that, and then hit refresh and go over to the username tab and change this to something unique. I will say I'll first try to update it without having proper username. It should work, and then I'll put something unique. I'll say all right, there we go. And just as a side note, we didn't configure this to let us know if the username isn't unique. So if you get this just spinning and it doesn't seem to be doing anything, it's because the username you chose is not unique. And to configure that, you just have to go back to the API and set a message. We didn't do that because we don't really need to. So we only have one left, and that is the permissions. So let's go back into the controller and copy the same one again. Now this one's going to be a little bit different, but for right now we can use this one. We'll say update permissions, and then let's go up to the top and grab that. Where are we? Here we go. Scope dot new permission equals data app.user.permission. Then let's go here. We'll say new permission. And we'll set this to permission. And replace this here. There we go. Okay, then let's go back over to the edit page. And for phase 4 here, we'll create the form. Actually, this one doesn't need to be a form. We'll just create a div. And then we'll say ng show, edit tab. Which one is this one? Not tab, phase 4. And so we'll have a label. We'll say current permission. Put 2 spaces here. So then let's create another variable here to use. So we'll say edit dot current permission. Okay, let's go back into our controller and assign that. So right here, we'll say app dot current permission equals data dot user permission. And actually, you know, we actually don't even need to, because we're not going to be using the scope one up here. Let's just use this one. Oops. Let's use this one here. Where are we? Right, so we'll change this. Okay, then let's have a few breaks. And then I'm going to have 3 buttons. This first one's going to be to set the access to user. Third one's going to be to set it to moderator. And then the third one's going to be set to admin. Type button. I'll put spaces after these. Oops. Okay. Go back to our controller here and whoops, misspelled data there. Make sure you got that. Then going back to our whoops, wrong page, edit page. Actually, we don't need this edit. Let's save this and check to see if it's all displaying properly. So go back and hit save, and then go to, save and refresh, and then click on permissions, and you should see the tab here, right? So it's telling you what the current user's access is set to. Okay. Now on the back end, we have this set to allowing only what you have access to, right? So for example, if I'm a moderator and I click admin, it shouldn't allow me to do that. Okay. Now, but before we configure that on the front end, what I want to do is disable user, because it's already set to user. So why even let them set user again, right? So let's create some variables so that we can control. So we'll say ng hide if edit.disable user, then ng hide edit disable moderator, ng hide edit disable admin. Then let's go into our controller and configure that. So let's go down. So here is our current permission. So in the, let's see, where are we? I'm looking for the permissions phase. Okay, here we go. So once we click on this permission phase, I'm going to initiate a check, right? So what I'll say is, if it equals to admin, well, let's start off with the user. Then app.disable user equals true. Else if equal to moderator, app.disable moderator, else if admin, app.disable admin. Okay, and let's make sure we clear these up here when the phase first starts. So we'll say app.disable user equals false, app.disable moderator equals false, and then app.disable admin equals false. Okay, and then let's go back to our edit page. And okay, and actually I don't want to hide these. Instead, what I want to do is disable it, right? Whoops, it's actually ng disabled. So go ahead and hit save and then hit refresh. If you go over your permissions, you should see whatever current permission is assigned, you should see it as disabled. So now let's create the functions for each of these buttons, okay? So we already have it created. It's called, edit.update permission. Okay, and let's make sure, let's go back to the controller. And it is, okay, it's plural with an S. So let's go ahead and change that. Permissions with an S. And then we'll pass in, for this one, we'll pass in user. This one, moderator. And then this one, admin. Okay, and let's go back to our controller. And what we need to do here is in this section, we're going to disable whichever button is updated, okay? So actually, let's change this. We don't need to set anything to pristine. We don't need to change disabled. But what we'll do is let's see. Let's grab this same criterion. And it's actually, we don't need to pass this valid. So what we'll do is we'll replace this. We'll say, paste this here. Okay, to make sure that we're assigning whatever permission is passed in the controller to the user before we pass it to that function. And then we're going to replace this here. Okay, so if the permission is set to user, then we're going to disable the user button, and then we're also going to enable all the other ones. So what is it? Admin, well, moderator is false, and same thing down here. And then same thing down here. Okay, since we deleted valid from here, we also have to get rid of this. So we'll get rid of this. Let's see, where does this break down at? Yep, right here. Okay. Don't forget, we also have to update the scope as well. So let's grab that, which is this one. Whoops, we don't need the whole thing. Let's see here. So here we'll set it to user. And then here we'll set it to moderator. And then here we'll set it to admin. So go ahead and hit save on that and then hit refresh and go over to your permissions. Now make sure whatever permission you assign, it updates right here. Okay, and you'll see that you can continuously go ahead and update the user's permission. Go ahead and hit refresh to make sure that permission is actually being set in the database. Okay, and now because I'm admin, I can set whichever one of these that I want. However, actually, before I go on with that, let me do one other thing. I forgot to disable these when the button is pressed, okay, because we don't want the user to be able to mash these buttons. So let's go back over here, and when this button is pressed, we're going to disable all the buttons. So instead of this app.disabled, what we'll do is we'll copy all 3 of these, paste them here, and we'll set them all to true. So hit save on that and then hit refresh. And so now you'll see it'll prevent you from being able to click all those while it's loading. And then once it refreshes, then it properly sets the ones that you can press. Now, as I was saying before, because I'm admin, I can change these willingly as much as I want. But let's see what happens once I'm a moderator. So I'm going to go to the database and I'm going to change my status to a moderator. Now, if we configure this correctly, I shouldn't be able to set admin now. And you'll see there it says insufficient permissions. You must be an admin to upgrade someone to the admin level. Okay. Now, one other thing is actually I want to clear that error message once the user clicks back on the permissions tab. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's go into the phases and clear error messages on each one. So name phase, we'll say app.error message equals false. Make sure we clear these on each phase. Oops. Okay. So that should fix it. Go ahead and hit save, and then I'm going to click on these other buttons and then come back and you'll see the error is gone. Now you want to make sure that it's not letting you upgrade past your level. Okay, so if you're a moderator, you should not be able to set people to admin. Likewise, if here, I'm going to do this really quick. I'm going to set myself back to admin. And then I'm going to set this person to admin. And then I'm going to set myself back to a moderator. And you should not be allowed to downgrade any admins. So it says insufficient permissions. You must be an admin to downgrade another admin. Actually, that should say to downgrade an admin, but whatever, you get the gist of it. And lastly, we want to check, of course, if you're a user, you shouldn't even be able to view this page. But let's just make sure that we get an error, right? So we'll say user insufficient permissions, okay? No matter what we do, we won't be able to. And likewise here, if we hit update on this, insufficient permissions, insufficient permissions, insufficient permissions. And then if you hit refresh, of course, it's gone, okay? And I'm gonna just change myself back to this. And you'll see now that any changes you make will be reflected here. Okay, so that wraps it up for this video. Thank you for watching. Take care.